Hi, everyone. My name is Gavin Luter. I'm Managing Director of the EPIC Network, which is Educational Partnerships for Innovations in Communities Network. My colleague Ada will introduce herself on her slide. And just so I actually got a couple of questions. Gavin, did you change positions? No, I'm a part-time Managing Director of EPIC-N. My full-time job is as Managing Director of the University Alliance at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we implement the EPIC-N, or the EPIC model. And yes, so I do have a day job, and I do pull from some experience in implementing an EPIC program. So, Ada, if we could go to the next slide. What we wanted to do today is talk a little bit about what the EPIC network is and how you all can get involved, and what is it that we do and what is it that we offer. So essentially, the idea behind the Educational Partnerships for Innovations in Communities Network, hereforth called EPIC-N, so I don't have to keep saying that. What we try to do is try to figure out how to leverage the human capital at universities and partner them with local governments and communities to make progress on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, of which there are 17. Basically, if you're doing anything good for humanity, that probably falls under the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. As just kind of a way to frame our work in terms of global significance, because every member country of the United Nations has adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, but also as a way to try to frame what you're doing in terms of helping humanity in some way. Some cities actually do track the Sustainable Development Goals and their progress toward them. Member countries are encouraged to do that as well. So that is why we use that framing. The EPIC model has kind of 5 basic tenets. So in order to leverage the human capital of universities, we have to respect administrative structures and individual responsibilities and incentives on all sides. It is difficult to buy out faculty time that is really cost prohibitive. And we do not want to try to make faculty and universities do things that they don't already do. So we try to use existing courses to link what communities need with the courses. So it is in some ways kind of traditional matching with community-based learning. We try to create a genuine partnership with local governments. And so by local government, I want everybody to know that we mean cities, counties, towns, villages, and other special purpose local governments. Could be a lake district, could be a transit district. It could even be a sewerage district, an economic development group that is kind of a district within a particular state. So we have a genuine partnership in the sense of we do try to listen to what exactly they need, and we respond to those needs. And we actually have a contract or MOU that we sign with these local governments. We also intentionally aim at improving the quality of life. As I mentioned, the focus on the SDGs. We try to focus on community-identified, community-driven, community-evaluated contributions to the community. So essentially, we do not show up saying, hey, we have this idea for how you should improve your own community. We show up and we say, hey, what kinds of projects might you need help on, that you need just a little bit of extra assistance in? And we show up with no agenda or expectation. And then we catalyze many disciplines and large N. The N in network can also mean for large numbers. And we'll talk about what kind of numbers of scale that we're talking about. But usually, on average, we are completing 40 to 60 projects per year in our EPIC-N program at UW-Madison, and that's called the University Year Program. We also are a global network. We have coordinators in Africa, Asia, Latin America, Caribbean, and South America. And so we actually have full-time coordinators in those areas, getting universities in those parts of the world to adopt this particular model. So we have a lot of partnerships with groups like ICLEI, the EPA, Global Adaptation Network, United Nations, of course, because of their work. So if anybody has any particular questions about the International aspect of our work, please let us know. We're going to mostly focus on the US based work. We have about 71 active programs. There have been more communities more campuses who have expressed interest, but those are the ones that we have as active members right now. Next slide. I think what this is just a way to say we're trying to take existing community projects from community partners that have already identified their community needs in terms of comprehensive or strategic plans. We try to use existing faculty and courses and other mechanisms on campus. We have multiple disciplines. We have a big, massive scale. So we think that the EPIC model is really scaled for impact. And I think it also highlights that local governments are not typically a recipient of community-engaged research, community-engaged learning projects at this point. So we are really trying to bring local governments into partnership with universities, because so often universities are very difficult to figure out how to navigate. And so we think the EPIC network allows us to create a model that is super easy and understandable, where they have one relationship manager that helps them get to different parts of each campus that we work with for their specific and tailored needs. So next, I'm going to turn it over and ask that my colleague Ada Inman introduce herself and then talk a little bit about more aspects of the model.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ada Inman. I am the program manager for EPIC-N and very happy to be here. So as Gavin mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about what partnerships look like using this model. And so here you'll see just one example of what a partnership can be, which shows both the scale and impact that the EPIC model can have. So in this example, there were 500 plus students engaged in 15 to 20 projects with the partner, which included 25 to 35 courses spanning 10 plus disciplines. From these courses, 20 to 25 faculty members were engaged, and then all of this combined resulted in 40 to 60,000 hours of effort going towards the community. And so, as you can see here, there are a lot of projects involved, but this is just one example of what a partnership can look like. We have a lot of varying sizes of programs throughout the network. So a smaller program might have fewer projects and a larger program more. And you'll see some more of this when our program managers speak. So talking more about what a partnership looks like. So to start off a project, the community identifies projects that they would like the students to work on. Once they have identified a handful of projects, they will sign a contract with the university to formalize that partnership. Then the university in turn takes those community identified projects and match makes them with faculty and courses at the institution. Once that matchmaking process is complete and they've found faculty and courses to head these projects, there is a scope of work process that needs to be done. So this is a mutually agreed upon document that outlines the timeline, responsibilities, activities, deliverables, etc., involved in the partnership. And so faculty, program leads, and community partners are involved in this process and mutually agree upon the final scope of work. So once that scope of work is finalized, a template is made for the project lead and faculty member to work off of throughout the partnership lifecycle. So once that process is complete, you can get started on the project. Usually at the beginning of the course, the project lead talks with the students about the partnership and the projects they'll be working on. They provide them with necessary information, perhaps about the community, about the projects at hand, anything that the students need to know going into the project. And so once that's done, the students can then get working on the project. The project lead is going to be there to help support, answer any questions, provide resources, anything that the student needs while they're working on the project. Then once the class is finished, a final presentation is usually delivered from the class to the community partner. And then with that, a final deliverable is also given to the community. In most cases, this is a written report that outlines the suggestions that the students have for the community partner. And I'll turn it back over to Gavin.
Great, thanks, Ada, appreciate it. And just so everybody knows, I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin. Ada Inman is actually based in Seattle, Washington. She used to be here with us in Madison, but she's just moved to Seattle, so close by to our West Coast people, but in particular, University of Washington is one of our active programs. So I also wanted to emphasize that communities usually pay for this partnership, and I feel like in the service learning world, this is a bit of a taboo, but just to try to emphasize that we are doing something a little bit different than service learning. I think people on this call might be familiar with Randy Stoker's big critique of service learning being really prioritizing student learning. What we are trying to do is really prioritize community benefits. Students are going to learn no matter what they're working on. So we are really, like, most of our programs don't have program learning objectives as a special program learning objective. Most of our programs are just facilitating getting students to learn their course content, and the faculty are the ones who create learning objectives for their courses, and the community partners are benefiting from that. So we really try to make sure that we focus on community partner benefit and listening to what they need. And I would not call us a student learning intervention. Students, of course, learn because they're working on real world projects, and they benefit with all kinds of skills that they get from things, but we want to try to focus on getting the communities what they need. So in order to create funding for this, a lot of our campuses actually charge communities anywhere from $5,000 to $250,000 for a slate of projects. It really can vary depending on the campus and what they find that their local governments are able and willing to pay for that particular engagement. So like I said, this gets us in a little bit of trouble sometimes with the service learning world of thinking, oh my gosh, you're charging community partners. Well, we're not working with nonprofit organizations. We're working with local governments who have the ability to get grants, and they have more of an ability to pay. And in order to make this happen, staff time really needs to be dedicated to it. So, and also once the partners realize that there's skin in the game, then they take the project a little bit more seriously. I don't know about you all, but I've certainly been on the end of a nonprofit partner who's left me hanging before because they didn't have anything on the line. But when local governments have to go to their city councils or county boards and say, we think that this is an important thing such that we will pass money through our governing board, they're usually very good partners and very responsive. So this helps try to address the responsiveness and engagement of our community partners. But that funding pays for program staff, maybe a faculty director, teaching materials, final report production. Our partners at Arizona State University have spent a lot of time and effort in putting those final deliverables together, whereas our program is a little bit more just do a quick copy edit and then we'll put like a report title on it and move it on. But final report production can be a really big resource intensive effort. Maybe travel expenses if the students need to do site visits, event hospitality expenses if we want to do it a celebration or something like that. And sometimes university core support, so administrative, IT, kind of some of our overhead that we have to pay at our universities. Yeah, so it just really depends on each individual campus how they want to spend the money, but it costs money to have a person who's like a concierge service for these local governments to get them to the right people. And that's what I really feel like we're charging money for. And in a way that I think local governments understand that is a cost and they are willing to pay for it. So, and we have 71 examples of campuses across the country that can back that up. Okay, Ada, next slide here. Here, I'm trying to change the slide from my place. It's not working so well. Resources for member programs. We are a network that tries to support programs to do this. So if you're wondering, how do we get started? We have all the documents and materials that you need. Our motto in the beginning was just start, because we don't want people to overthink it. All you need is a community partner who's willing and a university who's willing to test something out. Just go. And we have all the resources and materials that you need to get started. We have done plenty of webinars, everything from local government finance to, how do you evaluate your programs, to how do you get state funding for your programs, courses that we've offered, funding resources, actually opportunities for you to participate in joint grant opportunities. We actually have a couple of projects in right now where we're looking at building a city network of heat sensors, for instance, for campus or for cities that are looking at urban heat island effects. Also working on an NSF proposal right now where we are trying to get together with, or we're applying for the ExcelNet program with a network in the Northeast that is looking to build connections between cities globally and universities, and they're bringing us into that. We're applying for an EPA environmental justice grant together. So we do seek grants as a consortium. We do have an annual conference. We provide connections with other people who are doing the same kind of work as you might be doing. We have a project library of over 2,500 examples and deliverables that you can see right now. You don't have to listen to me. You can go and sign up on Epic N's website, and you can get access to all those program examples. We provide you technical assistance. We have a toolbox for ongoing maintenance of your program. We do have a Qualtrics license, just in case your campus does not have one. We do have one that you can use. We do provide support with evaluations, so template evaluations for your programs, so for your students, your faculty, and your community partners. We're also developing a return on investment model that we're hoping to roll out to our campuses at some point early next year. We do marketing. We help you tell the story. We have a membership certification process. We do have a listserv for troubleshooting. So lots of things that we do offer to our members. The next slide here is where we're actually going to start to talk about our campuses. So I'm actually going to mix up the order. I'm going to go Utah Tech and then University of Oregon, and then Dan, Cal State, Monterey Bay, and then Arizona State University, just because Ada is going to be sharing the slides for Utah Tech and University of Oregon, and then we'll turn it over to you all to share your slides. I'm going to ask that my colleagues from these different institutions introduce themselves before they start. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erin O'Brien from Utah Tech University.
Hello, everyone. So we are, I would say, a baby Epic N program. So I am a professor of biology at Utah Tech, and I am also the director of community engaged learning. And during our last strategic plan is when we became aware of the Epic N model. And so this initiative that we're calling City Alliance is part of our current strategic plan, and we're hopeful that it will be ongoing. Oops. Go ahead and advance. Sorry, I was trying to advance myself. So as I said, it's based on the Epic N model. So I am a half-time faculty director, and I have a part-time staff member. So we're the coordinators, we're the matchmakers, if you will. Because it's part of the strategic plan, we have received university funding to assist with this, which is really good. We are in Southwest Utah. So it is technically the second population center in the state, but we're not very populous. And a lot of the counties that surround us are rural and without a lot of people, and without a lot of funding as a result. So the funding that we get through the university has really made it easy for us to get this started. Having said that, we still have our second city and our third city that we worked with provided funding for their projects. So we were able to get funding for software needs, for equipment needs, for faculty to go out and do different kinds of projects. Go ahead to the next one. Okay, so in case you're wondering about the diversity of projects that have happened under the Epic N model, you can see that we have everything from geography to science to design to accounting, marketing. We have our technical writing students doing grant writing. We have art students working on public art policies. We actually have a small team of mathematicians that kind of work on a little bit of everything. So the crime statistics, the housing market analysis, even some water work we're having done by our math department. So it's really all over the place. A person who would make a really good coordinator is someone who really knows your faculty well, because the way that this starts is you really sit down with the city as a coordinator and they brainstorm on how you can collaborate. So having folks in the room who know what your capacity is across campus can be really valuable. The other thing that I have learned in the last few years of doing this is that it is essential to get all of the resources that your partners have up front. Small cities have very few resources often, and they are often understaffed. So it can sometimes take months to get things from them. And so we are now very careful with our partners and try to make sure that we have all of the resources we need from them, whether it's money commitments or if, big one is data. We have these celebrations at the end of the year, and twice now the outgoing mayor has said, Erin is coming for your data, be prepared. Because, getting our hands on the data is necessary for students to be able to work with it. But if you have any questions or would like to connect and ask about our experience, I'm happy to talk to you later.
Great. Thanks so much, Erin. Next, I'm going to ask that Megan Banks come on and talk about the Sustainable City Year program.
Hello, great to be here. Thanks, Ada. Thanks, Gavin. I also want to give a quick shout out to some of the other University of Oregon staff that are on the call. Mark Schlossberg, Professor Mark Schlossberg, who's our Sustainable Cities Institute co-director, and Lindsay Hayward, who's our relatively recent hire as an assistant program manager. So,
and Megan,
yeah.
Before you get going, I have to pay homage to our founders. The University of Oregon helped start the EPIC network, and we would not be here without the University of Oregon's willingness to share and their willingness to be really good national partners. So I did not have a slide in the history of EPIC-N, but if I did, it would have University of Oregon at the top. So thanks, Megan, for being here and being active in the network.
Yeah. Well, I can say it has exceeded our wildest dreams to see the breadth of the network across the globe. So thank you, University of Wisconsin, for taking that and running with it and being good stewards of this model. So I direct the Sustainable City Year program, and I also have recently started instructing at the School of Planning, Public Policy, and Management. And I just tried to advance my slides too. I knew it. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I'll highlight some of the things that Gavin and Ada have mentioned that really are the foundation of this model. So we go at this all in. We want to have value add for our partners. So we want to do as many projects and classes that we can. So we might do up to 30 for a large size partner. We might do 10-ish for a small community. And no matter whether they're large or small, we're definitely having impact when we go into these communities. We work across campus, and so far we've been in 5 of the 7 schools and colleges here at the university. We also only want faculty who want to participate. So it's voluntary, they choose to be part of our partnerships. We are working within existing classes and administrative structures at the University of Oregon. So there's no new things that need to be created or created, and we don't have to ask permission within the university. That works really well because new things are hard to do. We don't, as Gavin mentioned, we don't ever say, here's what you should do, city partner. We want them to come up with those project ideas that are a priority for either staff or elected officials. And then we try to match around that. And because we are working across campus, usually matches can be found in some discipline. I mentioned no special permission. And Gavin also mentioned we are fee-based. And we continue to do this because it does mean that there's an investment in the engagement. And so we see better results as Gavin, in terms of participation, as Gavin mentioned. All right, next slide. Here, here's an example of, well, here's the state of Oregon, if you wondered what it looked like. And here you can see we've worked across the state. You'll notice in kind of the southwestish area, it's a much more rural population, smaller cities, huge counties, smaller cities. So we're still trying to make inroads there. But we have worked in most of the state. Pretty much it's been let's see, we've had 14 partnerships since we started in 2009, 2010. We've done 5 special projects with communities, which are typically smaller scale engagements. And for the first time this year, we have a repeat city, and that happens to be our state capital and second largest city in Oregon. So we're extremely excited about this opportunity to go back in and do more projects. I'm going to take a breath. Everyone, take a breath. Ah, thanks. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to jump into some specific project examples, because if I was to talk about the hundreds of projects that we've done through the years, we'd be here for, I don't know, a couple of years. So I'll just highlight a couple. And we, you know, sustainability is in our name, but we don't define sustainability for our members. So it could be an array of things that they're working on that we are ending up addressing the SDGs. So starting with economic opportunities. When we did our first partnership with the city of Salem, we had business students, and they were looking at opportunities, economic opportunities of reusing industrial byproducts. And what the students did is they realized that the city's biodigester could accept industrial waste. And this was desirable for the city because it could generate revenue, and it meant that waste didn't have to be trucked an hour or two to the north. So after the city implemented this recommendation, they actually had $800,000 annual revenue from being able to accept this waste. So that was a huge win. Next slide. And Ada, can you do another click on it, and we'll get to the yeah. So we have a lot of waterfront in the most populated corridor in Oregon along Interstate 5. And we have found that many communities want to revitalize these waterfronts. The city of Albany, there, and it's called Water Avenue. It's a main thoroughfare that's near downtown, next to the river. Historically, it was log mills and industry, but more recently, it's basically just been underdeveloped, underutilized, large, really unattractive parking lots. So they worked with the University of Oregon landscape architecture students to develop ideas and concepts to revitalize the waterfront and Water Avenue, as well as make connections to a riverfront trail and a popular park where they host their summer concert series. So students came up with brilliant ideas and concepts, and it jump-started the city, and they're moving forward with urban renewal dollars to implement change and improvements to Water Avenue and make those connections along the riverfront. Let's see, next slide, please. We also do a lot of community engagement with our classes. And in this case, this is a city in Southern Oregon. The students focused on journalism students focused on a public relations campaign on emergency preparedness. And so what they decided to do was target students, and they had students take backpacks or cinches home with materials about community preparedness, and they had the students talk with their parents about those things. So hopefully, hopefully there were connections because students are always interested in what their children are doing in school. So this was a great avenue to get the word out. And recently, a couple of years ago, there were some major wildfires in Southern Oregon. So hopefully some of this emergency preparedness came through. All right, next slide. Gavin, how am I doing on time?
You're about at time.
Okay, this is, I won't even talk about this one because it basically repeats what you have already said. So thank you.
Great. Thanks. Okay, Ada, before you go on with that slide, yep, I'm going to ask that Dan Fernandez from the CSU Monterey Bay affiliate, come on in and share his screen.
Hi, everybody. Let me get into presentation mode. And here we go. Are you seeing it? Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Gavin, and the other presenters. Great to see you here and hear your stories. And great to see you too, Ada. I wanted to start by just giving you a little bit of history of my campus. It's a smaller campus than perhaps the other ones that you've heard from so far. Whoops, and it's on automatic timing, which I don't like, but we were founded in 1994, and you can see Bill Clinton came out, so it gives a little historical context of it. I started in 1996. We had our first students in 95, I started in 96, so I've been there a long time. And we're located in the southern area of Monterey Bay, on the former Fort Ord. We used to be a military base, and now we're a university. And service learning was a huge part of the start of our campus. And it was actually service learning folks that told me about EPIC-N and gave me the opportunity to go to one of the earlier conferences that was at the University of Oregon, where I got to see firsthand what was going on. And I brought a student with me, and we looked at each other and said, we got to do this. Come on, this just makes so much sense. The model is so elegant, and it is. It just makes sense. And I'm not going to go through all the details because you've heard them, but we follow something like that, a similar model. You know, there's tweaks here and there. That's what I'll tell you about now. Who am I? As I mentioned, I've been there a long time. I was hired to teach physics. I still do teach physics there, but I also teach courses in environmental studies, which is a program that started about 10 years ago. So I'm involved with a number of different classes across campus, and I teach a number of classes. And some of the classes I teach, particularly in environmental studies, are ones that naturally fit into the EPIC model. And they're ones that I always incorporate. So I'm the coordinator. I started the program, I should say, in 2015 or something like that, following my experience up at the EPIC conference. And just start, I think, is a great metaphor or a great slogan. That's what I did. It took some work to get it going. In my case, I'd say the pump was primed, and it's a little bit less work. I am both a coordinator and a faculty member in the program. I do not get any buyout. My university doesn't contribute anything, and pretty much hasn't. As far as financial, I get, they like it, but the CSU right now is strapped. So it's good that I'm not counting on anything from the university, because I'm not sure I'd be able to count on it this year or next year. So everything I get is from the community partners that I'll tell you about in a minute, who the community partners are. And I have a long-term passion for sustainability. So the idea of sustainability being in the title makes sense. And to pay homage to also the University of Oregon, Megan and Mark, I named mine the same as the University of Oregon. Later I realized, oh my God, that causes some confusion. But not that much, because we're a very different school. But I guess I could have been a little more original. But we're also the Sustainable City Year program. And now that's kind of baked in. So it'd be hard to change it now and say, oh, I'm going to change it to something else. But it's fine. It works. I'm also a FOG researcher, which is actually incorporated into some of the projects I've done. If any of you are interested later, I can talk about research and ways you can incorporate faculty research into, at least how I have, into the program. And I have, some might say, oh, gosh, that's a big burden being both a faculty member and a coordinator. In a way, it's an advantage, because I can kind of see what's going on from the perspective of a faculty member while I'm a coordinator. And my role as a coordinator is not as, I would say, we're a small school. It's not as intensive as a school where you're trying to get as many classes as possible. This semester I'm on sabbatical actually, but I may have 3 or 4 classes across campus involved in some way in the program. That's a kind of a typical number. It's manageable. It's not something that strains me, and it's a small added workload, not a huge one. And here's the history of some of the things I've done. I won't get into the details now, a little bit, but I also have a website that I'll show you if any of you are interested in seeing more details about the projects. But as I mentioned, I started the program, in 2015. And every year I've had a partner. I've never not had a partner. I've typically had my partners for 2 years, which has made it a little bit easier for transitions rather than going every year. It made it less effort for me each year to do that. And but it gives you an example of the, kind of the number of classes. It's hard to sometimes say how many projects I have because sometimes there's small projects within a given class. There may be several projects. Other times it's one big project that everybody on campus works on. So it's hard for me to enumerate specifically projects, although I do my best to do that on the website. I kind of try to break things down and list all the deliverables that the program has generated from my various partners. But for 2 years, I worked with the city of Salinas, that's the county seat. That was my way in. It was great that I made that connection and got that partner from the start. Then I was with the city of Seaside. The city manager at that point contacted me and said, I want to be part of this, which was great. That was my way in there for 2 years. And then go on to the next one. And then I was with Pacific Grove, and I had actually 2 city partners one year where it worked out, but not a lot of classes, particularly for the second one. I think kind of 2 classes, one part of mine and another one. So, I had some students working on one project, some in another. I know it's nice to have the whole class working on one thing, but sometimes it actually works better depending on your situation to have multiple options for students to pick. So as a faculty member, that actually worked well for me. Then I was again with the city of Pacific Grove for another year during the pandemic. I was able to maintain my program. We were able to do some remote things that were a benefit to the city. And now I have a 5-year partnership, which is certainly beyond what's typically suggested in the EPIC model, but it works, and it's a lucrative one. It's the most lucrative one I've had with the transportation agency for Monterey County, and that's been going really well. I've had several classes of my own that have done things like pedestrian and vehicle counts to try to assess whether changes to the road, temporary road diets or temporary road installations help with traffic congestion problems and help encourage people to walk and bike to school, young people. And if you're interested in seeing more, I have a website, and I'll just show you the website briefly here. Do I got a moment here to do that, Gavin?
You have about 30 seconds.
Perfect. So you can go to my website. The link is right here. It's a simple one, but you can also see it on my PowerPoint slide. And it kind of goes through all the city partners that we have, including my current one and all the previous ones. And you can see past partnerships and projects we've done in the past with photos and all those kind of things. So it's a still developing website, as websites should always be living. But this gives you a highlight of many of the things I've done at my small school. And so I want to emphasize that at a small school, the model is scalable. So if you're worried, I can't manage 30 projects or 30 classes, you can do a smaller number, and it works well, and it makes a big difference.
Great. Thank you so much, Stan.
Pleasure.
So good to have you here. I'm going to welcome into the conversation Julia Davis from ASU. Julia, if you could introduce yourself, and if you could stop sharing your screen really quickly so that, Julia can share hers.
Can you
Thank
see
you.
mine? Okay, great.
Perfect.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Julia Davis. I'm the program manager for the Project Cities program at Arizona State University, and I'm here to talk about how we've adapted the EPIC model. So a quick background, Project Cities is part of the Sustainable Cities Network at Arizona State. That started in about 2008, 2009 as a way to connect all of our cities, towns, tribal communities, whatnot around the state around sustainability efforts, was wildly successful. So Project Cities emerged in 2017 as a way for cities to get more involved in direct projects, as you've heard about today. So like all these other programs, we work with partners facing sustainability challenges, match them with faculty teaching at ASU, and then we provide solutions developed by students using project-based learning. So we do have some program goals. I know Gavin said usually programs don't. These are kind of more for my own evaluation. But first, we really work to produce research-backed solutions for communities. We want to also work on preparing the next generation of sustainability leaders through those student experiences, and then provide project-based teaching and learning experiences for faculty. I am a program manager I'm not a faculty member, so I have the luxury of being able to fully commit to this program. We have myself as well as a director and a coordinator, so I get to kind of focus on all three of these things at one time. So I really enjoy working with faculty and do a lot of work to try to make sure they have really positive experiences as well, since it can be tricky to figure out how to incorporate this into your curriculum. So over the past 6 or 7 years, we've done 104 projects, kind of as some of the other folks alluded to. Oftentimes there might be a project, but it has like 10 sub-projects within it or something. So this is a number. It might be triple that. We'll calculate it at some point, but it's typically kind of each class we count as a project, maybe 2. We worked with 9 different community partners, primarily cities and towns, but we did have our first state agency partner. That project just wrapped up about a couple months ago with our Department of Environmental Quality. And then we focused on 45 different project portfolios. That means different kind of sustainability subtopics, worked with over 1,300 undergraduate and graduate students directly in their classes, over 50 different faculty. That is the unique faculty, so I'll then come back 2 or 3 times. And then we work across our entire institution, which you're not familiar with ASU. We're 120,000 students, 4 campuses. On Tempe campus where I work, we have about 40,000 students. So we work across as many different disciplines as units as we can as a big R-run research institution. So how we've kind of adapted our program to EPIC-N from the lens of being a really large university that's very geographically large, so very different than Dan's university, and having a lot of different options for community partners, but being a very kind of a resource scarce state. So if you're poking around on the EPIC website, these are kind of the things I took from it. So in the model, it says maybe user request for proposals to draw people in. We really work one-on-one with community partners as they come to us to request assistance. We started with an RFP, but ended up changing that over the years to really try to adapt to our community needs, since things change really quickly for us here in Arizona. And then usually I think maybe, as you've seen in some of the presentations, it's 1 or 2 partners here with a lot of projects. We actually have more like 6 to 8 community partners a year with an 8 to 10 projects. So we have more partners with fewer projects per partner, since oftentimes that's more financially what works for the cities we collaborate with. And then we always have this existing administrative structures. I'm going to go into more detail about what that means for our program, because all of our projects come in through the research arm of our university, which might work for any of the folks on this call. We have a pretty rigorous IGA, ISA umbrella agreement process, subsequent scope of works. It's fairly time consuming, so wanted to share about that. And then, as Gavin mentioned, the summary reports, oftentimes in programs are kind of produced by student writers or just the students. We have a really intense, lengthy process where our program staff contribute to it, as that's a really big part of the kind of the value add for our communities. And then this is just a quick snapshot of kind of our phase of how our program has worked. We started with a kind of a smaller, more rural community in 2017, had an MOU, had some reports, was pretty easy. And then we did one RFP process or for a year or 2 with a couple larger cities, established all of those more intentional agreement processes, started kind of figuring out this report process. And then now 2022 to present, these are all been request-driven partners. So folks that have come to us and said, hey, we want to work with you. How might we do that? So we've really streamlined our processes and different price points depending on how many projects they want, what makes sense for them. And then we have our really, again, intentional design and review process that's managed entirely internally by our team. So our first adaptation about those existing structures, we have umbrella master agreements, so intergovernmental agreements or interagency service agreements. I have our nice boring Word documents here. I'm happy to share those if anybody needs any examples. These are really standardized, which makes it super quick relatively to get through our research office and has helped streamline that process. And then those things guide our cost milestones and deliverables. So our templates, but can be adapted to what each community needs. And then for our student deliverables, we are super proud of our reports that we produce at the end of each semester. After we get the student write-ups, it takes about 6 to 9 months to get those produced, printed, and sent to the communities. So we have a very lengthy how-to guide, lots of templates. We use Adobe InDesign for everything. We actually have a graphic design and communication student worker role that's been established, that's supported by our program and the community partners as well. And so this is another great touch point for how we continue to engage with our community partners in the long term and share this information around the entire state and through the Sustainable Cities Network. And last, I think something that Megan might have said, we really try to make a broad definition of what sustainability focused means. Sustainability may or may not land in the community that you work in. So we really try to kind of have this broad, if you're doing good for society, you're probably working on a sustainability focused project. So we really try to have communities come to the table with things they need help with, but also because ASU tries to really focus on mutually beneficial partnerships. We also do sometimes have instances where they may be like, hey, we're not actually sure what we need to do. What are your faculty good at? What could they bring to the table? So we have some of that two-way collaboration as well. I think it used to be just more one way, but that's been a more recent change, is that it's a lot more collective collaboration, which I really enjoy since we have so many fantastic faculty that work across all these different disciplines at the university. All right, short and sweet. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to share any project examples and stuff like that. We've done a lot. And otherwise, yeah, always happy to share documents, things people are interested in and whatnot.
Great, thanks. So thank you so much, Julia, Dan, Megan, Aaron. I think Aaron actually had to drop off. But we are happy to take questions. I saw one in the chat about how EPIC-N draws in local governments to propose projects. Yes, there are parts of this country that have not been served because there's typically not a university in that area that has been willing to serve that state. Usually our projects, not always, but usually our projects are kind of bound by state. So if University of Oregon works in Oregon local governments, Wisconsin, we've done Wisconsin local governments. Though I did have a project one time taken on by the University of Oregon students. So there's nothing to say that we can't work across geographic boundaries. But I'll just say that my answer to this question as a program manager is that I spend time in local government spaces and I listen to what they need. I go to the Wisconsin Counties Association, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, the Wisconsin City County Managers Association meeting, the American Planning Association, Wisconsin chapter. And I just get to know local government officials. And it's amazing, like when you're there and you're listening and they're like, wow, you think UW could help us with that? The answer is usually yes. So if you show up in their spaces, yeah, I think it's pretty easy to sell the program. We do have an RFP process that we put out there, but kind of what Julia had mentioned, we found that we're getting more and more just individual requests. They don't want to wait for the RFP cycle to open up. So, we're adapting to that to take rolling applications into us. So I don't know, Julia, Dan, Megan, if you all have any different answers to that one.
Yeah, I agree about being in the government spaces. We are lucky to be part of the Sustainable Cities Network at ASU. So if your institution or some NGO or whatever of sorts has a thing that gets cities together to talk about stuff, go to that. That is a great way to figure out what priorities are. And then the more time you spend with them, kind of like Gavin said, the more you kind of get the sense for what makes sense, doesn't make sense for them. If you're in a really rural area, it's probably different than an urban area, especially with what funds they can provide or what they're interested in. So spending a lot of that time listening is really important. And then I think that's why I also highlight having a mix of like structured template, but also flexible agreements, is because every city, town, county, whatnot is totally different. They have kind of similar things that guide them, but being able to adapt that has been really critical, at least for our program, as we've tried to grow over the years.
And I agree with all the comments made. The more you can get into different cities, the better. Right now, I would say that's less my focus because I'm such a tiny time as coordinator, really. But what's great is I actually find that cities start reaching out to me, or not just cities, municipalities, or it's just a person who knows somebody, But once you prime the pump with an initial city or two, word gets out and you'll become perhaps more of an object that sounds objectification, but more of a person that cities will come to when they need help. And they're like, oh, at University of Arizona or Utah State or University of Oregon or wherever, they're doing these things and they'll hear about it. And then people may start reaching out to you. I think that's also the importance of having a good website, a good public appearance that people can find virtually as well.
Great, Dan. I saw a question come over the chat from Colleen. What kind of lead time do programs give themselves between solidifying a community partner, developing a project, matching the faculty, and launching the match course. In my program, we give a year lead time. Other campuses probably do it differently, but it takes a lot of time to get the community to agree on exactly what they want. That's usually a process that takes us sometimes 2-3 months to clarify exactly what their deliverables are that they want. And then matching the courses, it has to be exactly the right time when faculty are looking for projects, because if you ask too early, they're gonna be like, oh, come and talk to me in 2 months or something. So we usually give a year lead time. Anybody else have different answers to that question?
I'd say we're on the quarter system. So we operate a little bit differently than semester system. And I'd say we try to finalize a partnership and start identifying classes by the end of the year, end of our school year. So end of May-ish, June. And partially because we host an in-person kind of networking event or speed dating to have the community partner meet with potential faculty. So administratively, behind the scenes, we're coordinating when faculty should be there, and the community partner just comes for a couple hours or an afternoon. We feed everybody, but this is a great in-person now, again, in-person kind of informal launch to the potential projects and classes that could be matched. And I mentioned the quarter system because we're obviously really intent over the summer trying to finalize those fall term classes, but they kind of evolve through the term as we prepare for winter term and spring term. So we kind of let those be a little bit more loose. And then as the closer we get to January and the closer we get to the beginning of April, we finalize all those projects and class matches.
Cool.
I would say like,
Julia?
I would say like fastest 3 months, and my research office is not happy with me whenever I do that. If someone's like, hey, I think that was with our state agency partner, they like, hey, we have some money we need to spend by X date. Can you get all this set up really quickly? We have a project in mind. And I was like, awesome. And that was really speedy because they knew what they wanted. Otherwise it's like 6 months, I would say usually is about how long it takes. But we kind of have adapted to more of a rolling schedule. So if someone comes to me in January and they're like, hey, I want to work with you, can you do something tomorrow? I'm like, absolutely not, but I can do something in August. And then same thing if they come to me like in May or over the summer, since we're on a semester schedule, then I'll say, okay, let's take a couple months to get stuff together. You can start in January or something like that. So I kind of let our semester schedule guide what that means. We try to limit our summer projects, but sometimes cities might have funds they have to use, or they have something they really want to do at a certain time. So we can be flexible to that too, but usually it's kind of semesters guide it.
And I think it always takes longer than you think. I've had, being a small school and being just me, I rarely have the kind of leads that I think we should have, which is at least 6 months. And even if I do, it's inevitable. Contracts just take a long time to get finalized. So I've operated without a signed contract. Some cities, I know that would probably be a no-no at a bigger school, but I can kind of get away with it a little bit, which is good for me. But I would say start ahead would be my advice. And but if you're at a small school and can do something kind of impromptu, knowing that it's going to get signed in a month or two, that can happen, but be careful.
I also wanted to welcome into the conversation Nancy Hauk from Utah Tech. Hey, Nancy, you just want to say who you are?
Hi, Gavin. I missed Aaron's, but I already know that piece. So thank you for inviting us. We really are advocates of the EPIC-N model.
Cool. And Nancy, what's your role at Utah Tech?
I'm associate provost for our academic community engagement. I'm Aaron's supervisor.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I mean, I hope that what people take away from this call is that the model is flexible, adaptable, can work for a big school, can work for a small school, can work for a medium-sized school. You can have faculty members driving everything. You can also have faculty members just plugging and playing where their course comes in. It really can be adaptable. And I would say, I know this is I know we're recording and I hope this doesn't get out too broadly, but any institution that is struggling with its public perception in the state, you might want to consider the EPIC network because oftentimes when we think about service learning or community-based partnerships, we think about people who are around our immediate locality. You know, our Mortgage Center for Public Service does a ton of work in and around the Madison, Wisconsin area, but they're not very active in Egg Harbor, and they're not very active in St. Croix County, and they're not very active in Wausau, Wisconsin. Of course, we have Extension, but Extension does a very, very specific set of programming. I would say like this allows you to get outside of yourself. And everybody, I know you might be thinking, well, you're 4 hours away from your community partner. What kind of meaningful work can you really do when you're 4 hours away? Turns out a lot. There are some communities that we've actually only stepped foot in once when we had a kickoff meeting, and our students never stepped foot. And I know that that's kind of a controversial thing to say in the service learning world, that like digital community engagement can actually be really effective. I'm a big advocate for it because I've seen it. Students' career paths have been changed because they did a virtual project with a community that they actually never went to. They picked up workforce and, you know, social skills that they would not have picked up. We hear about that in our evaluation. So I also did, I know we're running out of a time. It is free to join the EPIC network. We do ask if campuses are in a well enough financial position that they contribute anywhere between $250 to $2,000 to keep the network running. But we mostly run on grants that we get. So it's a administratively not very expensive model to implement. And in fact, it can be free. We have campuses who are not in good enough financial position where they can't pay any dues, and we're okay with that. We don't force our campuses to pay dues. We call it a membership contribution. So if you're wondering, where's the catch here? There's got to be some big dollar amount attached to it. The answer is no, there's no catch. If you can contribute to the kitty of keeping us alive, that's great. If not, we're going to try to go out and find grants where we can cover that for our member campuses. We have 2 more minutes. Are there any other questions or curiosities that you all have? I will be personally at the Campus Compact Conference in April in Denver. So we're working with Bobby to see if we could find a place on the agenda where we could do kind of a meetup with people and share a little bit more about the model and some examples. And so if anybody wants to come and connect with us at Campus Compact, just get in touch with me. I'm going to put my email address in the chat right now. Okay. And anybody can let us know if you have any questions or if you'd like to join us in the network. Really interesting community engagement model with a revenue neutral bottom line. And I think that makes it a very attractive proposition. Also, in the last 30 seconds, a lot of people might be like, what's the big deal here? This sounds just like community-based learning and matching and all this stuff. And the answer is like, okay, you're not totally wrong. Like, we are taking in community identified projects and we're matching them with courses, and you might call that community-based learning. But what I think is the real innovation here is that we are making it super easy for a particular kind of community partner to come in, access the resources of the university, give them the time and attention that they need to shepherd them across this university, be flexible, as opposed to just be like, oh, cool. Yep. This person does a communications plan. Good luck. We actually project manage, and we can do that at scale. And that, to me, I think is the real innovation here. So thanks again, Mark Schlossberg, for your genius in helping us get here to where you are, to where we are. Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Megan. Thanks especially to Ada for helping us get together. Thanks for Campus Compact for hosting the webinar. And we'll be in touch. Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.